father had a construction business. It was during the school year, and he said, "Hey, this weekend, can you bring home like a half a dozen of your college guys to come and give me a hand? We have this project going on at this one job, and I just need a lot of muscle." So I gathered 6 guys, and one of them was Vito. So there's 6 guys that are actually working with my dad, and he brings us all back to the house that night so my mom can feed everybody so they can sleep on the floor and work tomorrow. So he meets Vito for the first time. All of a sudden, I get on the topic of checkers, okay? So my dad was always a fantastic checker player, would never lose to any of my uncles, anybody that came over to challenge him. He would go to amusement parks and always be winning at checkers. He meets Vito, they sit down, they start to play checkers. And right out of the box, Vito beats him in the first game. So he's like in a state of shock. So all of a sudden he realizes, hey, college kid, where did you learn how to play checkers? So they developed this very, very close friendship in all the visits that he was to make to my house. He would always say, "Where's Vito and why isn't he here playing checkers?" Unfortunately, Seton Hall never had fraternity houses. So we were granted space in the student center, and we had designated tables for each fraternity and also the sororities. And so we would have a meeting place. So every day there would at least be 10 or 15 of us there, sometimes 2 or 3, depending on the day. But there would always be a fraternity brother around where you could meet up at the table and have a great conversation, talk about the day, talk about the class. A lot of the brothers shared, especially finance and accounting classes, so there was a lot of discussion about the different professors and which ones to take, which ones not to take, how to study for this test, what he's going to ask, and how to prepare, and this is going to be on the test, this isn't going to be on the test. So there's a lot of that about classes. There was also a lot of our intramural discussion where we were always involved in the sports activities and intramurals. As a fraternity, we were always the last place team because we were the smallest, the shortest, not the fittest group of guys that were trying to go play football against the teak guys who were all 6'5" and 250 pounds. So, but we had a good time. Sequentially, I was president, and then Vito was president the year after I was. So that helped out in later years, looking back, and how that prepared us for running a business, because the two of us were able to run this group of guys in this fraternity and to get all the horses going the same way when it came to a fundraiser or an intramural football game or whatever it was. We kept the group together, and I think we both realized that, hey, we were able to do that with these 15 hooligans. We could do that with a group of guys working. So it was good preparation for business. It really was. The best advice I can give to any young student or new entrepreneur, not necessarily a young person, but anyone going or thinking about going into business, is primarily you can't try it for a short period of time. You have to stick with it. You cannot give up. You have to really stay with it. It takes a long time to develop a business. People think that you just go into business and you have this great idea, and all of a sudden you start to sell a lot of product, or you start to sell some technology, and all of a sudden the business really gets rolling, and before you know it, checks are coming in and you're doing great. Well, that happens eventually, but you have to give it a good amount of time, and you have to be patient. And my best advice is never give up. As we were developing the business and we got to the point where we actually had some money to invest, Vito and I looked at different ways to either expand or diversify. So we looked at a couple of different businesses. So we took money out of Fleet Wash and we tried some retail adventures. We also tried at one point to go into a trucking company. And we stayed at those for enough time to realize that they were an okay business, but they weren't really going to produce or be profitable like Fleet Wash was. So we stepped away from that, stepped back from that, and in a short time realized it was better to take our profits and to put them back into the business that we knew, and we grew, and we know the best, and we were the best at. But that was something we learned the hard way in the beginning. biggest inspiration in my life was my dad. After the war, my dad was asked by my grandfather to please help out because they had 8 children, and they needed another source of income to help keep the family going. So my dad went and learned how to become a mason, learned a trade, and he, being the oldest, started to do masonry work, and all of a sudden started his own construction company as an entrepreneur. Now, in 1940, I don't think they used the word entrepreneur, but I certainly, as a young boy, watching what he was doing, learned these skills and these ways of starting a business and the benefits of that. My dad's business, he hired all his brothers, he hired his own father, his own uncles, and they all became part of this construction company, and they started to build homes and other things all through New Jersey. And as I got old enough, I was asked to come out on the weekends and see what was going on. And in watching my father develop this business, I realized that he had many hats, and he had to go out and sell and solicit. He had to estimate the jobs, do all the ordering of the material, keep all his brothers in line, and was responsible for the payroll and paying everyone and paying the bills and making the job profitable. And I was watching him and realized that he had a very limited education, but how smart he was and what a businessman he was. And I'm sure that that spark that I got from my dad actually lit the fire for Fleet Wash.